All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Questionable Calls podcast. Got Clark here with me this week, so this is be entertaining. We get some thoughts on the NBA playoffs. A lot of stuff going on. We're gonna dive in on the Lakers Timberwolves series, which looks like going to be an awesome series. We game one last night, and then we'll talk about some other NBA playoff stuff. But first, I wanted to get to Clark. I wanted to get your thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL draft. How they surprised everybody by taking Michael Penix with the eighth pick, and we've had a little bit over a week for everybody to digest and get some thoughts on it. And I feel like it's an evolving conversation. I feel pretty steadfast in what I believe. But I see that it seems like the people talking about this, there's like a kind of a gradual opinion change. But the people who are in the NFL, who work in the NFL or have worked in the NFL, they are steadfastly behind this was a bad idea, and there's no way you can possibly do this. So I'll let you have the floor. So Falcons take Michael Penix with the eighth pick, and everybody's trying to defend it, and especially the organization.
So, one thing, so let me I want to kind of like jump around a little bit on this because there's like maybe a few things that I find just funny about this. Okay. Michael Penix has not played a snap in the NFL. Okay. That is a
Right.
fact. He has not played in the NFL at all. So anybody who tries to tell you, you know, they know whether or not he's going to be good or that he's going to be a really good backup quarterback, that's, you can have that belief, but that's not based on evidence because he has not played in the NFL once. Okay. Not in the preseason, not in the regular season at all. And I just want to point this out to people. Like, heard Colin Cowherd mention this. Oh, they have the best backup in their division. He's never played in the NFL before. I know I've said that like 5 times now, but I'm going to keep saying it. Okay. And so people are like, oh, but he's got all this experience in college. I don't care how much experience you have in college. We don't know if you can play in the NFL until we see you play in the NFL. Okay.
Right.
So the idea that it's like, oh, well, now they just have a really good backup quarterback. Possibly. I don't know. You don't know that. No one really knows that. And also, I just find it funny that, like, haven't we all kind of agreed that, like, if someone stays in college a long time, isn't that indicative of, not that they're bad or anything, but just like, okay, maybe they're kind of a work in progress, or it's kind of taken them a while to get to this point. So shouldn't we have some trepidation? Like, if they were this good, why didn't we see this earlier?
Right.
So that, first of all, which I just find funny that I've heard some people say that. And then the other thing is, given how long he stayed in college, you want him on the bench for, and I just want people to understand this, the first 2 years of the contract are guaranteed. Okay. So I just want to point something for people like, oh, we'll just keep him on the bench for 1 year. No. Losing franchises would pay a quarterback that much money and then put him on the bench. Okay.
Right.
So, like, that's what losers do. They don't. You don't want to have really bad contracts like that where the guy either can't play because of injury, or you bench him for someone else because the guy who's making all that money isn't playing anywhere close to that. He's not worth that amount of money. So the idea that they would bench, Kirk Cousins for Michael Penix, just doesn't make sense just from a financial standpoint in terms of the salary cap and the contract that they just signed. Okay, so there's that aspect of it. And, the other thing is, if he's been in college so long, what, you want to put him on the bench for 2 more years? So what, he doesn't play, a meaningful down in the NFL until he's 26?
Yeah.
Like, now again, you could try to point to some examples of quarterbacks who were late bloomers, like, I don't know, Kurt Warner or something. but that's the exception that tends to prove the rule. Like that doesn't, typically you don't just start becoming good that late, into your 20s. Okay, so that stuff just doesn't really make a whole hell of a lot of sense, and it just feels like the Falcons don't know what the hell they're doing.
Right. That's the point I wanted to get
Yeah,
to, is that I feel like the biggest mistake that people are making that are defending this, number one, if you're defending this, then you obviously don't understand how the NFL works. That's number one. Because this is not how you do this. Like, this is not the way this is done. Period. It's just not. You don't sign up to pay a quarterback $40 million and then draft a guy. The best advantage you can have in the NFL is having a young quarterback on a cheap contract. You've basically nullified that advantage now. You've taken that and just kind of taken it and thrown it in the trash. The other thing is, people are assigning qualities to the Atlanta Falcons that they don't have. There's no way in hell that you're going to get me to believe that the Falcons in January were like, you know what? We're going to go sign Kirk Cousins, and then if Penix is there, we're going to draft him. That was not the plan 4 months ago. There's zero chance of that happening.
yeah,
It's much more likely that they're a little bit disheveled, don't quite know what they're doing, and they decided, oh, well, Penix is here. Well, hell, let's just take him. Don't tell me that was your plan all along, because there's no way that's true. There's
and by the way,
zero
guys,
chance that that's true.
yeah, this is not okay. You need to understand something. This is not like the NBA. Okay, your team can only have one quarterback on the field at a time. This is not like putting together stars on a team in the NBA where they have duplicate skills. You might be able to figure out some way to work it out. No, you got Cousins on the field, or you got Penix on the field, or somebody else. Okay, you only get one on there at a time. You can't have them both on there. So when the GM of the Falcons is like, oh, we love his intangibles and stuff. What are his intangibles? I mean, we love his intangibles. We love this and this. We love his arm strength, whatever. What does that matter if he's not on the field?
Yeah,
Like
that's
what?
great that you love him. Why did you sign Kirk Cousins then?
Yeah,
And the reason is because you don't have a clue what you're doing. And like you brought up, Clark, the only way a quarterback succeeds, especially a young one, is if he gets all the attention. That's the other thing that people who watch this don't understand how the NFL works. In order for Penix to succeed, he can't sit on the bench and get no snaps in practice for 2 years. That's not the best way to get him to actually be something 2 years from now.
right.
You have to push that guy. You have to give every resource you can to that quarterback to get him to succeed. So now you've basically made it so both quarterbacks are going to have trouble succeeding. You've made this impossible, and it's like, and now here's the thing, Clark, and I think is going to get lost here is, it's not a disaster. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to the Falcons? Like this year, they'll probably win their division. If they don't, they'll probably make the playoffs and probably lose in the playoffs. Okay. They probably were going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the funny part. The Falcons can just defend this to the end of time, because
Well,
they
but
can always say, well, what do you mean it worked?
I will say this: you've now created. If Kirk Cousins struggles, you've now created a scenario where the fans are going to be like. Now, I understand that could happen anyway with any other backup quarterback if one quarterback struggles, but if it's just some retread, then the fans will probably ignore it. But when you draft a guy that high, if Cousins starts to struggle, then people are going to be like, oh, well, what are we doing? I mean, you know what? He's kind of old. He's coming off the injury. Maybe he's well past his prime. Maybe he's kind of done. We should move on to this other guy, you know? And so now you've created the potential for that going on, which doesn't make a lot of sense, because those first 2 years are guaranteed. You can't, like, if you get out of that, then you're like the Broncos with Russell Wilson, where you end up paying all this money to get out of this gigantic contract. So,
Yeah, either way, you've got $45 million a year sunk into something that might not work. And so, the people defending this, it's just, like, okay, well, so what's the big deal? Like, okay, then if Penix is really good, well, what if Penix isn't good? Like, you're acting
we
like,
don't know if he's any good. He hasn't
right,
played in the NFL.
right. So you've created this scenario where you're now sunk all this money into Kirk Cousins, and you might not have a quarterback at all.
Oh, and by the way, let me just point this out. I find this hilarious. Okay, there are, I don't want to say plenty, but there are a lot of guys coming out of college who can throw the ball really well. Okay, some of them pan out and they're really good. A lot of them don't. Okay, So don't sit here and try to sell me on Michael Penix because, oh, that ball, when he throws it, it looks so good. You know, like, okay, if you guys watch some videos about Michael Penix and some of the struggles that he has, you kind of wonder, all right, was this all him? Was this the receivers he had at Washington? Was this the offense? I don't really know because, again, he hasn't played in the NFL, so it's really hard for me to. But I just find it funny people like, oh, when he throws the ball so well. There's tons of guys that throw the ball so. Look, Aaron Rodgers throws the ball really well, but that's part of what makes him really good. But there's a lot of other things that have made him really good.
Right. And if he's so good, how come 3 quarterbacks got drafted before him? I mean, and they put out the numbers last week. Since 2010, quarterbacks drafted in the first round. This is just getting a second contract only happens 40% of the time.
Yeah.
There's less than a 50% chance he won't even get to his second contract. So, I listen, it's fine. Like, you can do business that way, but I think Nick Wright said it the best. He's like, you're just basically putting a ceiling on your team. You can't go to the Super Bowl now. You're basically just saying, that's all right. We're comfortable making the playoffs and we'll see what happens. That's basically what you're saying, because you're severely limiting your team.
Yeah. Well, I just think, and like I heard Dan Orlovsky say this, he's like, well, what? They're not a player away. So, yeah, but it's a first round draft pick. Like, that you just put into something that the guy's not going to be on the field. Like, what, I love how people just, oh, forget, it's like, no, it's not like, and it's a top 10 pick. Like, you could have gotten somebody else. That's all right. You could have gotten somebody else that could have helped you now. Like, I mean, because again, you're not a player away, but you need more players, and that's one of the best ways to do it is to use a bunch of draft picks, and he hit on a few of them. So,
yeah, I think it's just it's a disaster in terms of team building. I don't think this is not how it's done. No great coach would ever do this. But the thing is, the Falcons can clearly justify it because their division's terrible and they'll probably win the division or make the playoffs, and they can just go, see, we know what we're doing. And that's the scary part. Like, what were you doing? And I've heard this brought up, and I think this is really valuable. What was the general manager doing for the last 6 years when Michael Penix was in college? Were you watching him? Because this workout he was unbelievable. It's like, you should already know exactly what he can do and what he can't do. Like, this isn't complicated. It's not like we don't have a bunch of film on him. This guy's not Trey Lance. He didn't play one game in 2 years.
Workout really impressed you? Like, come on, guys, really?
Right.
Like,
everything. That's the funniest part to me, Clark. Everything the Falcons say makes them look worse. Everything they say, it's just like, what? So wait a minute. What are you talking about? Oh, Kirk doesn't need to look over his shoulder. No. Right. That's why you drafted him 8th, because Kirk doesn't need to look over his shoulder.
Yeah.
It's just that's the biggest thing to me, Clark. Whatever you feel about the team building aspect, which I don't understand how there's an argument about that, but whatever. If you feel differently, I'll let you feel that way. But the Falcons, like, this was their plan. Like, that's where it falls off the rails.
The other thing is, I'll say this, and I don't know how. I mean, again, I don't know how involved Raheem Morris was in the decision, or if this was more Terry Fontenot. I don't know what the deal is, but I'll just say this, okay? We don't know if Raheem Morris is a good head coach. He was a head coach once before, a long time ago, and it was a disaster. Now he's getting another opportunity. Maybe he'll be better this time. Who knows? I don't know. But, I just, with the Falcons, like, I do think sometimes people are getting, like, I see where it's coming from when people say, oh, the Falcons weren't a player away. Yeah, I agree. They're not a player away. They're multiple players away. But I do think that there's kind of like a, we got to slow down on this and thinking that it's just going to work right away. Like, I think Kirk Cousins really benefited from being in Minnesota and having Kevin O'Connell call the plays. So, again, we'll see how this all works out.
Yeah, and who's the teams that are laughing all the way to the bank are Seattle and Indianapolis, because they got the 2 best defensive players in the draft at like 15 and 16 in the first round. So they're just going, oh, you're not going to take these guys who can play? Okay, we'll take them. So yeah, it just the whole thing, it's just going to be back and forth on this whole thing, and we're going to be talking about this for the next 2 years at least.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And just guys, just remember, I'll put a bow on this with the quarterbacks. Just remember, okay, there's probably going to be one good one and maybe one other one that can play, you know. And then the rest of them, I mean, there's probably going to be one or two busts, and then there's going to be somebody who kind of hangs around a little bit. Just the numbers tell you that this is, you don't get 5 or 6 quarterbacks that are. This is not the 1984 NFL draft quarterback class. So
right. Well, and 1983, and a bunch of those didn't work
83,
either.
yeah,
Todd Blackledge and Tony Eason, and
yeah,
Anyway, so all right, so we'll move on from that. So Clark, the Minnesota Timberwolves beat the Denver Nuggets last night
yep,
in Denver. Clark,
quite a game.
Anthony Edwards is coming.
Yeah,
I think it's official. If you didn't know, now you should know by now. Watching that game, this dude's for real. And we can all stop making fun of the Rudy Gobert trade because it's safe to say, unlike the Atlanta Falcons general manager, the Minnesota Timberwolves general manager is doing the right stuff.
yeah, they've got. I mean, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I was just laughing. I mean, at Anthony Edwards is just he's doing all these fadeaway jumpers and he's nailing all of them. You know, and driving to the basket and stuff, and like you can tell, like that's the other thing too. Like you can tell watching him, like I was watching Hoops Tonight after the game, and Jason Timpf was just saying, like, he's got the potential to be like at some point the best player in the league. He's
Yeah.
got the potential to be one of the best perimeter defenders in the league because he has the tools that you need to do that. And then in the regular season, like he's actually playing better in the playoffs than he plays in the regular season, which is that's the sign of somebody who's really good.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, the only thing that was a really good game, and like I think after the game, I think it was Ernie Johnson or Charles Barkley was like, "I'd sign up for 6 more games of that," and I'm like, "Yes, please, I would totally sign up for five or 6 more games of that." But yeah, I think with Minnesota, the thing we got to wonder is, are they going to get enough from everybody else? Now they did in this game. Conley played well. He got some assists. He was hitting some shots. Nas Reed was ridiculous. Carl Anthony Towns, he got 20, but the problem with Carl Anthony Towns is he got a bunch of stupid fouls and then he's out of the game. And it's like, dude, you can't be doing that. They need you out there scoring points because that's one of my concerns with them. We'll see how things kind of go moving forward because you can't just have it all be on Anthony Edwards. I mean, he's going to have some games like he had yesterday, but yeah, you could tell Denver was trying to double team him when he would come off pick and rolls and stuff. So that's why he started ISOing all the time. Yeah, so I mean, it's just he's one of the most fun players to watch. So you know what, guys, this NBA offseason, can we just stop talking about the Lakers and LeBron and Golden State and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant? They're all out of the playoffs. Okay, I don't care. Okay, can we talk about Luka and Anthony Edwards and Denver and Boston and if you want to talk about Philadelphia, like fine, but I'm done talking about these. Like, no offense to LeBron, he's a great player. I've enjoyed watching him his whole career. Steph Curry's a great player. Durant's a great player. But come on, guys, like the future is here already, and it's with these guys. Like, I mean, to be honest, the NBA, really, what the NBA should be hoping for is that Anthony Edwards goes all the way to the finals.
Yeah.
Because I mean because in order for him to be like, now he's already in some commercials and stuff, but in order for him to be like really a face of the league, they need him to keep. I mean, we need more games like he had last night, but he also needs to get far in the playoffs. So
Yeah, I think that I'm glad you brought that up. I was thinking about this earlier today. Like, this ESPN constantly telling us about the Lakers and the Warriors the whole season. We knew they had no shot. Charles Barkley was on this like a month ago. He's like, this game is for young people. He's like, the old people, they're not going to win. Like we need to move on from it. And it's like, oh, but LeBron was so good in the series. Yeah, he was good. But when your best player's 39, you're not going to win playoff series. That's just the way it is. I know they fired Darvin Ham and they're all going to blame the coach and all this other stuff, but guys, they never had a chance. I know everybody's tried to convince us, oh, the Lakers are actually good. No, not really. Like this
Right.
idea that, oh, well, if they just got past Denver, like, no, I'm sorry. They're not beating any of these teams in the playoffs. They got past Denver, Minnesota would kick their ass. You know,
Right.
that's what would happen. So yeah, I think I was watching that game last night and I was thinking, the third quarter got into the fourth, and I'm like, I think Denver's going to come back and win, because I've just seen Denver
Right.
do it so many times. I'm like, they're going to come back because they came back so quickly in the first quarter of the game when they were behind. I was
Jamal
like,
Murray didn't even score in the first half, and they had the lead at the end of the first half.
yeah.
So
So I was like, they're going to figure this out, and just Minnesota hit them with a barrage in the fourth quarter, and that was the end of it. So
yeah,
yeah, I am a little worried as a Denver fan because of Jamal Murray seems to be banged up, but I don't think it's just him for that team, and I think I think Denver's got some stuff they got to figure out. I'm not saying whether I don't know whether I think Minnesota's going to win the series, but this is going to be a war. This is going to be a battle
yeah.
down to the end. Minnesota has,
Well, and the thing you got to remember is that Denver seemed kind of out of sorts, and what this tells me is that in the next game they're going to make adjustments, and so I think the next game will look different. That's usually how these playoff series go. So, but yeah, I mean, Charles Barkley after the game is like, yeah, Jamal Murray's out there on one leg, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how true that is. Like, is that I know he got an injury earlier. Like, is that really affecting him? I don't know. I mean, they missed some shots. Jokic was missing some stuff close to the basket. Um, and Minnesota and Denver, they played a tough series last year. Now, Denver won in 5 games, but yeah, Minnesota's size is a problem. Minnesota, the way they can play defense is a problem. And so, yeah, Denver's going to have to, figure out how to adjust to that. And to be honest, it's probably an adjustment compared to playing the Lakers because, yeah, the Lakers have some size, but I don't feel like they have the perimeter defense that, Minnesota does. So I
right.
think that that's an adjustment for Denver. So I fully expect Denver to win the next game. Can Minnesota win the series? Like, again, they're going to need to make sure they're getting contributions from other guys outside of Anthony Edwards. Karl Anthony Towns, like, dude, you got to stop getting stupid fouls. Like, these guards are baiting you into going into the air on the 3-point line and fouling them. I don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, he did a good job. Whenever he got a small guy on him, he attacked him, and I think that's important. And he tried to guard Jokic a little bit, and Jokic was just kind of playing games with him. It's like, oh, you're gonna try to get in the way and take a charge. Oh, okay. Well, I'll just run you over next time. So yeah, I think there's definitely some adjustment there, but Minnesota has some serious matchup advantages. I mean, Clark, honestly, I think this might be the finals. Like watching this series, because I don't think Oklahoma City's beating either one of these teams. And like, I know everybody's going to tell me about how great Boston is, and I know I'm not a hater. I haven't bought into it,
When's
because I've been
Porzingis going to be back? We talked
right.
about that during the regular season. If he gets hurt, that's a serious problem. And you're saying, oh, several games. I've watched the playoffs a number of years. When they say players out several games, that has a way of going, well, he's going to be back now. Oh, no, he's going to be back in a week. No, he's going to be back in a couple days. No, it'll be the next series. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, I think Boston could probably get to the finals without him. But honestly, it's like, and the thing is, like, you're gonna play if you play Denver, Boston plays Denver and Minnesota in the finals. Like, good luck. Like, I've been hearing the whole season, oh, Boston's really deep. Well, no, they're not. I said that at the outset. They have, if Porzingis is not out there, they got Horford and Xavier Tillman. Like, good luck playing Denver or Minnesota with that.
Yeah.
Like, because Minnesota just has an ability to lock your ass up. And,
Yeah.
Anthony Edwards isn't going to put up 40 every game, but,
No.
Whenever he does, they're going to win.
Yeah.
So it's, I really think, like, I'm just looking at the landscape of this, and I think this Denver, Minnesota winner, I think they're in the driver's seat to win the championship because I don't think Boston can beat Denver. And I think if Minnesota is able to do this, like, that's a unique challenge that Boston doesn't have to face anywhere else. And this is the downside to Boston having this really easy path is they won't have anybody challenge them. They get to the
Right.
finals and it'll be like, whoa, what is this? Because it'll be a whole different level. So we'll see what happens. So moving on from that, so I wanted to talk about this, and I feel like this has become Dallas has become a sexy pick for people. On some of the shows, well, because they love Luka, and he almost, he was in the MVP conversation, and Dallas has been playing really well since the trade deadline, and I think I want to caution, I think everybody's lost their minds here. Like, I looked it up. Oklahoma City is favored to beat Dallas in the series. Okay, and there's a good reason for that. Okay, it's because they're a better team. Like, I've been watching this series with Dallas and the Clippers, and every game, and I'm not impressed with what Dallas does. Like, yes, Luka and Kyrie are going to go off from time to time. I get it, but this Clippers team was a broken down, whatever it was, broken down team that really had no chance to win this series. Like, Dallas doesn't show up in game 1 at all. Gets blown out. They're losing by 31 in game 4. They make a comeback and they end up losing the game. There are games where Dallas just doesn't show up. And this idea that, oh, well, their defense is really fantastic, has been really good since the trade deadline. I'm watching the game. Every time the people on the broadcast say, well, their defense is playing really well, somebody gets blown by. Okay, Kawhi was a shell, didn't play for 3 out of the 6 games, or 4 out of the 6 games. Okay, and so they really had. It wasn't like they had one. James Harden had 1 or 2 good games in the series. It cracked me up the other night when they went to TNT. They went to break at halftime, and they're like, James Harden's had a great series, and Barkley's like, what are you talking about, Ernie? He played 2 good games. The rest of the time, he's been terrible.
Yeah.
And as advertised, James Harden doesn't do anything in game 5, doesn't do anything in game 6. Like, I don't know what to tell you people. And listen, I'm rooting for Dallas. In the series, I will be hoping Dallas wins. I want Luka to win. Like, he's my favorite player to watch. I'm going to be pulling for them like crazy. But Oklahoma City's a better team. And this series win that Dallas has against the Clippers, I'm sorry, it's just not that impressive. This Clippers team is a broken down mess, and they struggled in some of the games to beat them. It took them 6 games. And so
Yeah.
I feel like they will have some big games, but Oklahoma City's got they're better positioned. They've got
Right. Well, it's like, you gotta be careful how much credit you give teams for winning playoff series. Like, for instance, Boston beat the Heat. I mean, come on. No
right.
Jimmy Butler. You guys are supposed to win, and you did. And they blew them out basically every single game. Okay. Minnesota beating Phoenix. I liked what Charles Barkley was after that series ended. He's like, yeah, I don't think this is that big of a deal. I just think Phoenix was a Minnesota's a really hard matchup for Phoenix. So I just don't see why it's that, and I totally agree. I don't see why it's that big of a deal. The Clippers, come on, man. People have been trying to sell us on the Clippers for like 5 years now, and it never, like, okay, 3 years ago, for like one game, it all came together with Paul George and Kawhi. They were playing really well, and then Kawhi tore his ACL. Okay, and that was the end of that. And it's basically been, they're trying to get back to that point ever since, and it's never going to happen. Okay, so stop trying to sell me on the Clippers. Dallas, we'll see. You're going to have a bigger challenge than the Clippers. You're going to have Oklahoma City, who they're young and ready to go. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, just in this series with the Clippers, Luka's getting beat up. It's like, oh, he's playing really hard. Luka's playing hard on defense. I don't know that he's playing better defense. Like, Kyrie's actually playing a lot better on defense than Luka is. So yeah, I think we've gone a little crazy. Dallas basically, it's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit, Clark, of what the Lakers did last year, where the roster was terrible. They made some moves at the deadline, and then they were functional. And everybody went, oh my God, they're going to win the title. It's like, no, they're just functional now. And that's how I look at Dallas. With that, before they made the trade for Gafford, they were okay. But this made them, oh, okay, this kind of solidified the best that they could be. But yeah, I just think Oklahoma City defensively, they've got just way more athletes than Dallas does. They have a guy, they know exactly who their guy is. Shai Gilgeous is getting the shots at the end of the games. And then they have all these guys who can do all this stuff. Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. So yeah, we'll see we'll see how it goes. And it's not like, the criticism of Oklahoma City is, well, they're not big enough. Well, Dallas isn't really going to take a whole lot of advantage of that. They have pretty much kind of small ball centers, and so that's kind of how it's going to go. So we'll see what happens. Like everybody's like, oh, they're going to get beat up on the inside. Well, it hasn't happened to Oklahoma City so far.
Right.
Yeah. So I just think it's funny. Like people are like, Dallas is going to the conference finals. Nick Wright gave Dallas the second best odds to win the championship the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just
Yeah.
like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you doing? Like, when they do this, he does this title pie where he gives everybody a percentage, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, it should be 3 teams that have about 65 or 70% of the pie and then everybody else. And he's got like Dallas at 25 or no, I'm sorry, Boston at 25, Dallas at 18, Denver at 17. It's like, what are you talking about? You actually think, like, the people who actually think Dallas is going to beat Denver in a series, they just make me laugh.
Yeah.
I just don't think they have any chance to win 4 games against them. So yeah, I'm still with Denver to win the title, but I think these next series could be, especially in the West, are going to be really fun.
Yeah. I think the Eastern Conference, unfortunately, could be really boring.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to play Cleveland now because Cleveland won today against Orlando in Game 7. So I think I think Boston will beat Cleveland easily, and then we'll see what happens. But yeah, it cracks me up, the Boston without Porzingis thing. Like, it's just hysterical to me that this Boston team, well, look at their point differential. They're one of the best teams ever. It's like, yeah, one guy gets hurt and it's like, oh, well, we're not winning the title now. So it's just, it just makes me laugh. It's just like, really? Like, so yeah, I haven't bought into the Boston thing until I see, they honestly, I'm at the position now, Clark, where Boston can win the championship. I'll be like, yeah, I don't know. I still don't buy it.
Yeah.
I still don't believe in them. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, the Philadelphia Sixers and the New York Knicks series. That was a fun series. I don't know if you watched the last game, and it was really entertaining. But as typical with Philadelphia, it's like Joel Embiid is, in the playoffs, he's a shell of whatever he was in the regular season, and that's kind of how that works. And the Knicks are a typical Tom Thibodeau team. They play their ass off all the time. They play hard on defense. They make these role players make you think they're better than they are. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, yeah, it's a really entertaining series. It's like, but I'm sorry, I don't buy either one of those teams. Like, I think the Knicks, it's like, it's Jalen Brunson and well, let's hope these guys make shots. And
Right.
in that Philly series, they did when they needed to. But anytime Philly got rolling, like, you could see how much more talented the 76ers were than the Knicks. So we'll see. I think the Knicks could give the Celtics some issues. Like, if they can kind of get this into a fight, kind of drag them into the mud, I think they got a chance. And Boston doesn't really like to play that way, because they
Right.
don't have, especially since they traded Marcus Smart, they really don't have a lot of their tough guys anymore. Not that they were ever very tough, but they really don't. They don't really have that. So we'll see how it goes. I think the Knicks could give them a hard time, but the fact that there's Brunson's your only reliable guy scoring the ball, I just find it really difficult. So it's yeah, it's kind of like, man, like, I think especially with the Western Conference, the NBA is poised for something big here. This is going to be a lot of fun. And but yeah, it's just, man, it's too bad the Eastern Conference is such a joke. It reminds me
Well,
of,
I will say this: the NBA wants the Knicks to get to the conference finals because you could have at least 2 conference finals games at Madison Square Garden, which that hasn't happened in Jesus 20 25 years. I
yep,
mean, Jesus.
yeah,
So
that was,
yeah, that would be really good for the league, but we'll
yeah.
see if it happens. I mean, I don't know. Like, can they beat Indiana? Sure. I don't know how good Indiana is. So
Yeah, Indiana is one of those, run and gun teams. They don't really play a lot of defense. So it looked okay against Milwaukee because Milwaukee was a complete mess and had everybody injured. So
yeah,
yeah, it's just unfortunate. That's kind of the way the NBA works now. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I'm still taking Denver to beat Minnesota. Probably, I mean, it's going to go 6 or 7 at least. So
right.
what do you think? Are you sticking with Denver, or you
Yeah, I'll
think
stick with
Minnesota's got
Denver
it?
up to this point. I mean, I'd like to see over the course of the next few games, like, is Jamal Murray like really affected by that injury that happened in the Lakers series? Like, because if that is, that's a serious problem. But I mean, I felt like he got going in the second half. So, yeah, again, I think that Denver will look a lot better in the next game. They'll make some adjustments. But yeah, I'm still going to go with Denver. I don't want to like bail too quickly, because Minnesota. I mean, yeah, they've got. I guess they've got what you need, but they just haven't. They haven't done it before, so it's a little hard for me to just totally get on board with that. But I mean, if Anthony Edwards can keep playing like this, then maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's a hard game to judge because if Anthony Edwards doesn't get 40, they don't win.
And if
So it's
Nas
like,
Reed coming off the bench isn't really good and hitting
right.
shots and stuff, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is he going to do that every game? And
No, I don't think so.
yeah, so I think I think it's going to end up Celtics Knicks. I think that'll be the Eastern Conference Finals, and then Western Conference will be Oklahoma City against Denver. But Minnesota's definitely got a shot, and I think the Denver Minnesota series, whoever wins the series is going to the finals. That's my 2 cents on that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be really fun playoffs. And Clark, we still got the Florida Panthers in the NHL playoffs, so they're going to play Boston tomorrow night in Game 1. So,
okay.
So we'll see. How that goes. Anyway, all right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope you check us out next time, and we'll try to keep this every week. All right. Have a great one.